Welcome to Washington Today for Monday, September 30th, 2024. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thank you for joining us. President Biden is promising that help is on the way for survivors of Hurricane Helene. He also said he's been in touch with local leaders about what they need to help the rescue, recovery, and rebuilding efforts, and that he's looking to Congress to help fund it. The governor of one of the hardest hit states, Roy Cooper of North Carolina, said the situation there is, quote, life or death. We'll hear from both coming up. It is just 36 days until Election Day and a little more than 24 hours until the vice presidential candidates face off in their only debate. Democratic nominee Governor Tim Walz has been prepping with 2020 presidential candidate and Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg, while Republican nominee Senator J.D. Vance has been practicing with House Republican Whip Tom Emmer. Meanwhile, the top of both tickets have been focusing on hurricane relief efforts in the South. We'll hear from both of them coming up as well. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent a rare direct message to the Iranian people today saying Israel, quote, stands with you. His message comes as Israeli special forces carried out raids inside Lebanon against Iranian-backed Hezbollah targets, and airstrikes hit inside Beirut's city limits for the first time since October 7th. Well, we start back here in Washington as President Biden spoke this morning from the White House.
I spoke for a couple hours with leaders yesterday affected by this hurricane, and Governor Kemp of Georgia, Governor Cooper of North Carolina, county officials in the Big Bend region of Florida, and other leaders in South Carolina and Tennessee about the broad and devastating impacts of Hurricane Helene. It's not just a catastrophic storm, it's a historic, history-making storm. The entire Southeast and Appalachia. Damage from the hurricane stretches across at least 10 states. Winds over 120 miles an hour in some places. Storm surges up to 15 feet and record flooding. Communities are devastated. Loved ones waiting, not sure if their loved ones are okay, as they can't contact them because there's no cell phone connections. Many more folks displaced with no idea when they'll be able to be returned to the home, if ever, if there's a home to return to. So we're keeping them all in our prayers, and all the lives lost, and those particularly unaccounted for. There's nothing like wondering, is my husband, wife, son, daughter, mother, father alive? And many more who remain without electricity, water, food, and communications. And whose homes and businesses have washed away in an instant. I want them to know we're not leaving until the job is done. I also want you to know I'm committed to traveling to the impacted areas as soon as possible, but I've been told that it would be disruptive if I did it right now. We will not do that at the risk of diverting or delaying any of the response assets needed to deal with this crisis.
At least 119 people have died across 6 states, with many more still missing. Hundreds of roads remain closed, especially across the Carolinas. That makes it harder for rescue and relief efforts to reach people in need. And according to PowerOutage.us, more than 2 million customers remain without power. Here's more from the president.
I've directed my team to provide every available resource as fast as possible to your communities to rescue, recover, and to begin rebuilding. In addition to FEMA, it includes the Federal Communications Commission to help establish communications capability, the National Guard, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Department of Defense are going to provide all the resources at its disposal to rescue and assist in clearing debris and delivering life-saving supplies. So far, that's over 3,600 personnel deployed. That number is growing by the day. I quickly approved requests from governors of Florida, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, Virginia, and Alabama for an emergency declaration. And I approved additional requests for the governors of North Carolina, Florida, South Carolina, and for a disaster declaration to pay for debris removal and provide financial assistance directly to survivors. FEMA and the Small Business Administration are there to help the residents whose homes and businesses were literally destroyed, washed away, or blown away. And the federal search and rescue teams have been working side by side with state and local officials and partners in very treacherous conditions to find those who are missing. And they'll not rest until everyone's accounted for. I want to thank all the first responders and everyone who's been working around the clock. One of the brave teams who's volunteered to be there is from San Diego County Fire Department. set to travel all the way from California to North Carolina to help. But on their way, they were in a terrible car accident in Louisiana. We pray for their full recovery, but it was a bad accident. We know there's more to do, and we'll continue to surge resources, including food, water, communications, and life-saving equipment. We'll be there, as I said before, and I mean it, as long as it takes to finish this job. Let me close with this. As president, I've seen firsthand the devastating toll that disasters like this take on families and communities. I've been on the ground in many disaster areas since I've been president. Excuse me, and I've heard dozens of stories from survivors about how it feels to be left with nothing, not even knowing where or when to get back on track. I'm here to tell every single survivor in these impacted areas that we will be there with you as long as it takes. For the sake of yourselves, and your families, I urge everyone returning to their communities and home to listen to the local officials and follow all safety instructions. Take this seriously. Please be safe. Your nation has your back, and the Biden-Harris administration will be there until the job is done. God bless you all, and I'm thinking of those that are still wondering where your loved ones are. Thank you.
The president added that he would ask Congress for supplemental funding to help with recovery efforts.
Will you need to ask Congress for a supplemental?
That's my expectation, yes.
Do you know roughly how much you're thinking?
Not yet. This is a historic storm. It's devastating. They've never seen anything like this before. And some of them are back-to-back, 3 storms in a row. So it's really, really devastating.
Would you consider asking Congress to come back for a special session to pass a supplemental?
That is something I may have to request, but no decision has been made yet.
Do you have a sense of where you'll go when you are able to go, sir?
Yes, I've told the governor of North Carolina to go down, and I expect to be down there by Wednesday or Thursday. It would be clear for me to go. You guys have traveled with me. You know, there's an entourage. This can be disruptive.
Is there a mistake for President Trump to be down there today in Georgia? Is that disruptive?
I don't have any idea.
Meanwhile, in North Carolina, Governor Roy Cooper gave an update on the situation in the Tar Heel State.
Well, first, we knew that this was going to be a significant event, and local officials told people to get out of low-lying areas. We also know there are going to be a significant number of fatalities here. The devastation was beyond belief. And even when you prepare for something like this is something that's never happened before in Western North Carolina. Search and rescue teams are continuing to work. We even talked with some people who are still hoping to get and talk with their people, and as phone service comes back up, we'll know a little more. I'm going to ask Will Ray to respond specifically to see if he knows that number. Do you know of number of people? Okay, we don't know the number that has been requested, but we ask people to call 211 if they're trying to get a hold of somebody. Don't call 911 right now on that kind of issue.
Next question, WLS.
Yeah.
Senator Cooper, you mentioned progress being made on cell service. That's been a big issue in all areas of Western North Carolina. What made you say progress? Can you elaborate on that, and what areas can expect that cell service?
So we're getting reports from AT&T and Verizon. Their initial problems were significant in that landslides cut main fiber lines for them. We've asked them and pushed them to bring in their deployable assets, so more of them are getting into the area, and we're getting reports that more and more have cell service. Will, would you want to add something to that?
I would say progress is the key. We know we still have a lot of work to do, again, but I think we are pushing our commercial providers as well as other partners across the commercial space to bring in mobile assets of a variety of types to be able to provide to critical sites, to local EOCs, some of our public safety answering points, or other critical facilities. Again, they are very integral to what we do. They are a huge piece of it. We know communications is important for everybody, and so we're going to continue to push and encourage there.
Next question right here. Right here. Governor.
Sorry. Yeah.
Governor, what do you say to the residents who feel that the local and federal response wasn't fast enough following this storm?
So first, people are working around the clock to provide help to them right now. Food, water, working hard to make sure that we've got shelters open all across this area, and working to get power back on. When you have a situation where communities are completely cut off, when first responders can't even get in because water is still there and rivers are rising right now as we speak, a lot of work is done. What we want to tell people is that more help is on the way and help is continuing. This is our main mission right now, and this is a massive coordinated effort to help this area both in the short term and in the long.
And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis talked about how relief workers from his state are helping out in North Carolina.
Because there wasn't a demand for rescue operations pretty shortly after the storm, we quickly recognized that there was a demand for ongoing rescue operations in western North Carolina. So we launched Operation Blue Ridge. We have State Guard, we have National Guard, we have Fish and Wildlife. They are on the ground. We have a way for people to sign up, just like we did when we rescued people out of Israel, just like we did when we rescued people out of Haiti. You can sign up, and we potentially can bring a Chinook helicopter or a smaller bird to come lift you out. I don't think you're going to be able to get very many people out on cars right now. A lot of the roads have been destroyed in that part of the state of North Carolina. So it's a really serious issue. There's a lot of people that still need to be rescued. You know, some people may want to hunker down and just want some supplies, but you're going to have to airlift in the supplies too. So that mission is ongoing. We're happy to be able to assist. I know a lot of Floridians have already signed up. I think a lot of people in Florida know, but if you don't, in the summertime, western North Carolina is like Florida North. I mean, you throw a dart anywhere, you're going to run into a Floridian. And a lot of them come home probably by the beginning of September. But as we're out here, this is scorching hot still. When you're up in those mountains, it's a lot cooler, and sometimes people stay. So I know there's some Floridians that have stayed. So we're conscious of that, and we want to be helpful for them to be able to bring them to safety. And it's just going to be like we did in Israel. We had Floridians sign up. We had the planes. If people from New Jersey or wherever wanted to get on the plane to leave Israel during the Hamas-Israel war, of course we're going to rescue them. So same thing that'll happen with North Carolina. We have some Floridians sign up. You go. If there's other residents, if they're North Carolinians or whoever, of course we're going to let you get on the helicopter and bring you to safety. So our folks are working there. We do got guys on the ground in that part of the state already helping. You know, when you land a helicopter, you got to have an LZ. You got to have a place to land it. The Chinooks are big. They can fit probably 40 packs to bring them to safety, but you got to have a place to land. So we're working through all that and very much want to be involved in that mission. And again, these are rescue assets that are not being used in Florida, partially because we had such a robust response immediately after the storm.
And earlier today, Florida Republican Representative Kat Cammack talked to C-SPAN about the cost of rebuilding in her state.
Well, there's no surprise that in Florida, we've been struggling with rising costs of insurance and providers leaving the state. That has been a several-year issue that we've contended with. And of course, insurance is the first step that people are taking photos, submitting to their insurance companies. But in many cases, like in my district, these areas are not predominantly second homes or tourist homes. Places like Horseshoe Beach, there are a lot of primary residents that have lived there for 40, 50 years. And a lot of these homes are not insured. So you have a tremendous effort from the community to help rebuild, but also this is where FEMA has resources that we've tapped into in order to help these folks. But for sure, insurance companies are the first ones that people should apply to. There are programs out there that can help those that aren't insured, but it is frustrating that after so many, times of dealing with this, that there's always some sort of delay or some sort of hiccup. And when it comes to a disaster like this, people just can't afford to wait.
Representative Cammack represents Florida's 3rd district. That stretches from towns west of Jacksonville, south to Gainesville, and then east to Gulf coastal areas. She was on Washington Journal this morning. You can see all of that interview at cspan.org and on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. You're listening to Washington Today.
In October 2024, James Carville turns 80 years old. The longtime Democratic strategist has been involved in national politics since the early days of the Clinton campaign, and even before. So the latest C-SPAN Podcast The Weekly is a best of episode, the best of and most colorful moments with James Carville on C-SPAN, like his 1996 speech to students at American University.
Most other people in life suffer their failures in private. So make no mistake about it. I ain't apologizing to no one for what I did for a living or what I want to do for a living, and you shouldn't either if you want to go into politics. But they will come at you in a lot of different ways to kill your spirit. They will come at you in a lot of different ways to destroy your resolve. They will come at you in a lot of different ways to take you and tell you that you don't want to be involved, that it's just a dirty business.
What are some of the most colorful things James Carville has said on C-SPAN? What are some of the most colorful things others have said about James Carville on C-SPAN? And what are James Carville's favorite Cajun jokes? Find out in the latest episode of C-SPAN's Podcast The Weekly. Find C-SPAN's The Weekly wherever you get podcasts.
Welcome back to Washington Today. Campaign 2024 news now. We're just 36 days until the November elections, and both candidates are focusing on hurricane damage and relief efforts in the South. Republican nominee former President Trump was in Valdosta, Georgia.
We came down with truckloads of things, and we're going to have that done by Franklin's incredible organization. They've done such a good job. We've done this before, but we have a lot of truckloads of different items, from oil to water to all sorts of equipment that's going to help them. But we're here today to stand in complete solidarity with the people of Georgia and with all of those suffering in the terrible aftermath of Hurricane Helene. Hurricane Helene turned out to be a big one, like just about the biggest that anyone's seen. I spoke with all of the relief people, all of the people that do this for a living and do this at least to help. And they said they've never seen one this bad. Valdosta has been ravaged. The town is very, very badly hurting, and many thousands are without power. They're running low on food and fuel. We brought a lot of it down with us. It's going to be distributed now or soon throughout Georgia, as well as North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, Virginia, Alabama, and Tennessee. That's our big one. And the devastation wrought by this storm is incredible. It's so extensive. Nobody thought this would be happening, especially now it's so late in the season for the hurricanes. Homes, hospitals, highways, and cars have been plunged underwater. Entire neighborhoods have been turned into lakes. Nobody's seen anything like it. And to every family that's been displaced here in Georgia and North Carolina, which has really been hit, we were going there also, and they don't have communication. They don't have anything right now. We're trying to. I just spoke to Elon. I'm getting him. We want to get Starlink hooked up because they have no communication whatsoever. And Elon will always come through. We know that. And so we're working on that, getting them hooked up. They asked me whether or not that would be possible. We're going to try and get the Starlink in there as soon as possible because they have no communication. And throughout the region, our hearts are with you, and we are going to be with you as long as you need. It's called an hour of need. You're in our prayers, and we pray to God. And throughout the long weeks that lay ahead, you're going to have a lot of work, but the end result is it's going to be good. We just wish so many people weren't so badly hurt, and in many cases, sadly, no longer with us.
We heard former president refer to Franklin Graham. He is the son of the late Reverend Billy Graham. Reverend Franklin Graham also runs Samaritan's Purse Relief Organization and appeared with the former president today. Democratic nominee Vice President Kamala Harris cut short her campaign swing through Nevada to return to Washington. She posted on X earlier today, quote, "I was just briefed by FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell on the latest developments about the ongoing impacts of Hurricane Helene. We also discussed our administration's continued actions to support emergency response and recovery. I also spoke with North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper about the ongoing rescue and recovery efforts in North Carolina. Our administration will continue to stay in constant contact with state and local officials to ensure communities have the support and resources they need. Doug and my thoughts are with those who lost loved ones and those whose homes, businesses, and communities were damaged or destroyed during this disaster. That from Vice President Harris's account on X. She was scheduled to go to FEMA headquarters here in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. Now, late last week, she sat down for an interview on Matt Barnes's All the Smoke podcast.
You've always been secure in your identity, who you are, but what do you feel or what do you think when you hear people kind of questioning just the fabric of who you are?
Well, one, I don't listen to it. Okay. I'm really clear about who I am, and if anybody else is not, they need to go through their own level of therapy. That's not my issue.
Their issues, right.
My mother was very clear. She was raising two black girls to be two proud black women. And that was never a question. You know, it's funny because over the years, journalists, some, not most, will want to talk about it. And I say, okay, if you want to have this conversation, I'm prepared to have it, but sit down and get comfortable for a few hours. If you want to start talking about race in America, you want to talk about the 1/8 rule?
A drop.
You want to talk about what it means in terms of who you are perceived to be and the impact that can have on the rest of your life, regardless of who you actually are in terms of your God-given capacity and the rights that you have and should have. So, you know, I don't mess with that. I think that's other people trying to figure some stuff out that and they
got some issues.
They got to deal with it.
And we're a little more than 24 hours away from the only scheduled vice presidential debate between Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio and Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. USA Today watched 10 hours of Governor Walz's debate footage over the years, and they summarized it like this, quote, Governor Walz's optimism and fire is alive and well in his almost 2 decades of being in politics. They go on to write, quote, often described as disarming, the former educator and football coach turned politician has come to his past campaign debates armed with statistics and personal anecdotes, pressing for answers from his opponents, using quick and animated affronts to land a blow while making defined arguments. In between blasts, he can often be seen sipping from a bottle of Diet Mountain Dew. And Politico writing about then candidate J.D. Vance's performance in a 2022 debate, saying, quote, the final debate between Ohio Senate hopefuls on Monday night got so ugly that it was mildly surprising to see Republican J.D. Vance and Democratic Representative Tim Ryan shake hands at the end. Politico went on to write, quote, locked in an extraordinarily tight race, Vance and Ryan battled over who was the bigger suck-up to their respective party leaders. Our coverage of tomorrow night's CBS News vice presidential debate begins with a preview show at 8 p.m. Eastern. That's followed by our simulcast at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. The debate will run 90 minutes. It will be moderated by CBS Evening News anchor Norah O'Donnell and Face the Nation anchor Margaret Brennan. And, of course, control of Congress is also at stake this November. And Senate Minority Whip John Thune offered his thoughts on the state of the race from the Republican side.
Democrats have a ton of money. I mean, it's 2-1 in Michigan, right? All the way across the board, Arizona through Wisconsin. Here is where the New York Times has these battleground states. They got Wisconsin Dems up 2, Pennsylvania up 9, Arizona up 6, Ohio up 4, Michigan up 5, which is the race we started with for this conversation. You want to counter on that or not?
Well, those polls right now, I think, reflect, and they're mostly, in most cases, they're margin of error races, right? And the polls, historically, at least in the last couple of elections, particularly when Trump's on the ballot, really underestimate, I think, the Trump vote. The folks who are going to come out and support the president and in our candidates for the United States Senate races. It doesn't make any sense if you're for President Trump not to give him a Republican Senate to work with. Otherwise, the Democrats are going to be blocking him for the next 4 years. So I think there's a very close correlation between how the president performs in those states. These Senate races, which started out a little bit behind the president, are starting to tighten. And if you look historically, the correlation between how the top of the ticket performs and how those down ballot races perform, it's gotten closer and closer through the years. So I think it bodes well. I think we're set up really well not only to get the majority, but to win some seats that would give us a bigger majority. Obviously, we have to execute.
An enduring majority, because I was looking at a piece last week that if Republicans take over this time, given the states that are up the next 2 or 4 or 6 years, it is likely that Republicans would then still be in the advantage. So if they can get the majority this time, the likelihood of being able to hold it over a longer period of time is greater. Is that correct?
Well, that's true, and as you know, Dana, it's enormously important, but this is the make or break moment. If we don't get it here, 26 and 28 obviously are cycles that we'll have to contest. We've got more vulnerability on our side in terms of some of the races that will be up that year. But we see this as for the sake of our country. Trying to win the trifecta, the House, the Senate, and the White House is enormously important. We need all three, but at a minimum, we need the United States Senate as a check and balance. And historically, that's what it's proven to be. It is the quintessential sort of insurance policy, I think, for people in this country to prevent a lot of bad things from bad Democrat policies from happening.
South Dakota Republican Senator John Thune on Fox News earlier this morning. And here's Tom Bevan, co-founder and executive editor of Real Clear Politics, on where the polling stands right now.
Well, Kamala Harris has done a very good job of energizing the parts of the Democratic coalition that were really sort of suffering and lacking under Biden's candidacy. That was young voters, it was African-American voters, women voters. And that was almost immediate, just by virtue of her being not Donald Trump and not Joe Biden. A lot of those concerns that a lot of Democrats had about his age or his mental acuity sort of went immediately away. A lot of Democrats who were disaffected and had parked their vote with RFK Jr. came immediately back into the fold. And so, again, took a race that was really getting away from the Democrats and made it very, very competitive across the board. Still a lot. I mean, there's a Telemundo poll that just came out, yesterday, and we've been looking at the average among some of these demographic groups. Hispanic vote is I think her biggest problem spot. That's a vote that Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden both won by 35 points or so. Kamala Harris not doing nearly as well, and again that splits by gender. She's having trouble with male voters, not just white male voters, but African-American male voters and Hispanic male voters, and also those that are even skewing younger. So you can get into the weeds pretty quickly, but I think overall the Hispanic vote right now is one of the biggest trouble spots for Kamala Harris. That's a part of the coalition that she really needs to bring back into the fold in these final weeks if she wants to be successful in a lot of these battleground states.
And the former president?
Well, he's got the same problems that he's always had, right? He's a turnout machine for his voters, but he's also a turnout machine for Democrats. And his biggest problem spot, obviously, is women, suburban women, even independent and Republican-leaning women. That's a group that he really didn't do well with in 2020. Republicans struggled with them in 2022. Obviously, with abortion being a focal point of this race and it being on the ballot in places like Michigan and Arizona and Florida, that's a message that the Harris team is driving home hard. And Trump still has a lot of work to do with women. The gender gap this year is as big as we've ever seen. In some polls, it's over 35 points, which is massive. Obviously, Trump's doing very well with men, but he's really, really struggling with women.
Tom Bevan, co-founder and executive editor of Real Clear Politics on this morning's Washington Journal. You can see more at cspan.org and on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. Reuters writing today that U.S. officials have said Israeli troop deployments in Lebanon suggest a ground incursion against Hezbollah targets could be imminent. President Biden was asked about that earlier today.
I'm going to stick with this.
What's that?
I'm going to stick with this subject, but go ahead.
Well, it's just the fact that Israel may be now launching a limited operation into Lebanon. Are you aware of that? Are you comfortable with their plan?
I'm more aware than you might know, and I'm comfortable with them stopping. We should have a ceasefire now.
Reuters goes on to say that Israeli officials say, quote, they will do what is necessary to return some 70,000 citizens evacuated from northern Israeli communities after Hezbollah on October 8th began rocket strikes in support of a Hamas assault on Israel from Gaza the previous day. Also today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu sent a rare direct message to the Iranian people, whose authoritarian government is the main supporter of Hezbollah.
I speak a lot about the leaders of Iran. Yet at this pivotal moment, I want to address you, the people of Iran. I want to do so directly, without filters, without middlemen. Every day, you see a regime that subjugates you make fiery speeches about defending Lebanon, defending Gaza. Yet every day, that regime plunges our region deeper into darkness and deeper into war. Every day, their puppets are eliminated. Ask Mohammed Def. Ask Nasrallah. There is nowhere in the Middle East Israel cannot reach. There's nowhere we will not go to protect our people and protect our country. With every passing moment, the regime is bringing you, the noble Persian people, closer to the abyss. The vast majority of Iranians know their regime doesn't care a whit about them. If it did care, if it cared about you, it would stop wasting billions of dollars on futile wars across the Middle East. It would start improving your lives. Imagine if all the vast money the regime wasted on nuclear weapons and foreign wars were invested in your children's education and improving your health care, in building your nation's infrastructure, water, sewage, all the other things that you need. Imagine that. But you know one simple thing. Iran's tyrants don't care about your future, but you do. When Iran is finally free, and that moment will come a lot sooner than people think, everything will be different. Our two ancient peoples, the Jewish people and the Persian people, will finally be at peace. Our two countries, Israel and Iran, will be at peace. When that day comes, the terror network that the regime built in 5 continents will be bankrupt, dismantled. Iran will thrive as never before. Global investment, massive tourism, brilliant technological innovation based on the tremendous talents that exist inside Iran. Doesn't that sound better than endless poverty, repression, and war? From Qom to Isfahan, from Shiraz to Tabriz, there are tens of millions of good and decent people with thousands of years of history behind them and a brilliant future ahead of them. Don't let a small group of fanatic theocrats crush your hopes and your dreams. You deserve better. Your children deserve better. The entire world deserves better. I know you don't support the rapists and murderers of Hamas and Hezbollah, but your leaders do. You deserve more. The people of Iran should know Israel stands with you. May we together know a future of prosperity and peace.
Part of a video released by Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The escalation in fighting in Lebanon has killed civilians, destroyed homes, and displaced 1 million people. Israeli airstrikes have killed at least 7 high-ranking Hezbollah commanders and officials in recent weeks, and we heard Prime Minister Netanyahu mention one of them, the Hezbollah group's chief, Hassan Nasrallah. He was assassinated in a strike on his underground headquarters in Beirut on Friday. Finally today, President Biden hosted more than 400 U.S. Olympians and Paralympians from the Paris Games at the White House. The U.S. took home 126 medals, the most of any country, and placed third in the medal count in the Paralympics with 104.
Because I'm president and I cause commotion when I go places, they wouldn't let me go to the Olympics. Well, I watched it all. Jill, my wife, went to the Olympics. Guess what? I was supposed to be introducing at the inauguration of the President of Mexico, who is a fine woman. I'm going to be seeing her shortly. But I said, I'm staying here meeting you guys. She's going to represent the United States. She's in Mexico. She was able to say hi to many of you this morning before you left. I said, where were you this morning? I'm looking for you. He said, I was out saying hello to the Olympians. As you know, she led the U.S. delegation to Paris. All she did when she came back home, I mean this from the bottom of my heart, was talk about how amazing you all are. Talk about the amazing resilience, the courage, and the commitment, and the loyalty to one another. My staff would have their TVs on, watching you as I was trying to get briefed on national security. But in fairness, I had the TV on in the Oval Office as well. We felt so much pride. And I'm honored to welcome 400 athletes from Team USA today here at the Capitol. part of a nation so vast, so diverse, and so talented is like no other country on earth. 230 total medals won at this year's Olympic and Paralympic Games to finish atop of overall medal count, period. When you competed, it wasn't just you in the spotlight. You represent all the people who sacrificed for you, as was mentioned earlier, just as you sacrificed yourself.
Today's event also included speeches from 2 gold medal winners, swimmer Tori Husky and Paralympic basketball player Paul Schultz. You can see the entire event at cspan.org and on the C-SPAN Now mobile app. That's also where you can find this program as a podcast. It's also on YouTube. Just search Washington Today. And for more on the stories that are shaping Washington every day, get our daily email word for word. Just go to cspan.org/connect to subscribe. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thanks a lot for listening today to Washington Today.
C-SPAN's Washington Journal, our live forum involving you to discuss the latest issues in government, politics, and public policy from Washington, D.C. to across the country. Coming up Tuesday morning, author and vice presidential scholar Joel Goldstein discusses the role and history of vice presidential candidates as this year's candidates, Senator J.D. Vance and Governor Tim Walz, meet tomorrow night in their only debate. And then we'll preview the debate with the co-founder and national politics reporter of 24 Sight News, Tom LoBianco. Also, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution's Ernie Suggs discusses the 100th birthday of President Jimmy Carter. C-SPAN's Washington Journal. Join the conversation live at 7 Eastern Tuesday morning on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, our free mobile app, or online at cspan.org.